Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Rayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Sarasatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayam Mudiraye.
Tato Jayam Udiraye.
Nashtapareshu Abhatreshu.
Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishiki.
Bhakti Bhavati Naishiki.
Hare Krishna devotees, thank you very much for coming. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, entitled, you know, somebody knows? Creation of the Fourth Order. And we're in chapter number 23, March Pritus Going Back Home, text 9. Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Abhajat Purusharshabha.
Abhajat Purusharshabha.
Abhajat Purusharshabha.
Abhajat Purusharshabha.
Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Abhajat Purusharshabha.
Abhajat Purusharshabha.
Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Abhajat Purusharshabha.
Abhajat Purusharshabha. Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan. Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Abhajat Purusharshabha.
Abhajat Purusharshabha.
Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Abhajat Purushashabha.
Abhajat Purusharshabha. Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yat Ahadyatmikam Param.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Yogam Tenaiva Purusham.
Abhajat Purusharshabha.
Abhajat Purusharshabha.
Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan.
Yadahadyatmikam Param.
Yadahadyatmikam
Word by word. Sanat Kumara,
Sanat Kumara,
Sanat Kumara, Bhagavan, most powerful, yet, that which, aha, said, Adhyatmikam, spiritual advancement of life, Param, ultimate, Yogam, mysticism, Tena, by that, Eva, certainly, Purusham, the Supreme Person, Abhajat, worshipped, Purusharashabha, the best of human beings. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Ace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thus, the best among human beings, Maharaj Prithu, followed that path of spiritual advancement which was advised by Sanat Kumara. That is to say, he worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Purport. In this verse, it is clearly said that Maharaj Prithu, practicing the pranayama yoga system, engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as advised by the saint Sanat Kumara. In this verse, the words Purusham Abhajat Purusharshapha are significant. Purusharshapha refers to Maharaj Prithu, the best among human beings, and Purusham refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The conclusion is that the best man amongst all men engages in service of the Supreme Person. One Purusha is worshipable, and the other Purusha is the worshipper. When the Purusha who worships the living entity thinks of becoming one with the Supreme Person, he simply becomes bewildered and falls into the darkness of ignorance. As stated by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 2.12, all living entities assembled in the battlefield, as well as Krishna himself, were also present in the past as individuals and would continue to be present in the future as individuals also. Therefore, the two Purushas, the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, never lose their respective identities. Actually, one who is self-realized engages himself in the service of the Lord perpetually, both in this life and in the next. Indeed, for devotees there is no difference between this life and the next. In this life, a neophyte devotee is trained to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and in the next life he approaches that Supreme Person in Vaikuntha and renders the same devotional service. Even for the neophyte devotee, devotional service is considered Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. Devotional service to the Lord is never considered a material activity. Since he is acting on the Brahma Buddha platform, a devotee is already liberated. He therefore has no need to practice any other type of yoga in order to approach the Brahma Buddha stage. If the devotee adheres strictly to the orders of the spiritual master, follows the rules and regulations, and chants the Hare Krishna mantra, it should be concluded that he is already at the Brahma Buddha stage, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14.26. Mam cha yogya vicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitya Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who is engaged in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada
Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitascha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna devotees, and once more welcome. Thank you very much for coming. We're in the 4th canto, chapter 23. So we've been hearing about Maharaj Prithu for quite some time now, and it's been very inspiring, I think, to hear from such glorious personalities. And also we could see how Maharaj Prithu progressively went through life very ideally, according to rules and regulations, according to Varnashram Dharma, but also according to different stages in the yoga ladder, basically. And one could wonder that he was performing so many activities as a king, and then he was asking the Kumaras, Sanat Kumara in specific, about the goals of life. And then now he started doing yoga, the yoga process. He started following pranayama, and it's a little bit confusing at first when a devotee reads this and sees that he practiced. So before he was practicing severe austerities, like the jnanis, like the yogis, and then he started pranayama, controlling the mind and senses. And now here Prabhupada also says in the purport that Maharaj Prithu, practicing the pranayama yoga system, engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as advised by the saint Sanat Kumara. So, how comes that Maharaj Prithu engaged in all these practices? I'm not sure if we spoke about it before, but yesterday I was listening to a short class by Surnaspan Maharaj, where he also spoke about this topic of how Prithu Maharaj, as the ideal king, he went through all the different stages, and what does it mean for us? Does it mean we also should go through that? Because that's sometimes argued, especially if you talk to spiritualists outside of ISKCON, like especially, for example, these Yoga Vidya people. Whenever I meet some of them, they come here or somewhere else, they always say, yeah, Bhakti Yoga is nice, I do a little bit of Bhakti, but I'm more into Karma Yoga, and I do some yoga also, some Hatha Ashtanga Yoga. So we have to balance things. Just doing Bhakti is not really practical. And Prabhupada and we have a different kind of understanding of this thing. Although also in Bhagavad Gita we can see how Krishna guides Arjuna through all the different yoga paths, but in the end he clearly says, Sarvadharma Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vrajaya, give up all these other kind of paths and dharmas and just surrender unto me. And also here, so Prithu Maharaj, why does he do all this? Basically, and I think Dhamma Prabhu read this last time, Maharaj Prithu practices the advice system for the Satya Yuga. So we are now being in Kali Yuga, we're not really qualified to do this. And Prabhupada says here in the text 8 that was, that, of course I will not find it, but basically he said We have no qualification for any of these things. The only means of elevation is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Yeah, and then he says, King Prithu's activities took place in Satya Yuga, and in this age, this practice of yoga is misunderstood by fallen souls who are not capable of practicing anything. So Prabhupada is very, very clear, very strong, making this point that actually there is no other saving grace than the bhakti process, and especially the chanting of Hare Krishna. And so, another thing that we can learn from Maharaj Prithu here is also that although he's a Shakti-Avesh avatar, he's already perfect being actually. He goes through all these things and he's really seeking for spiritual knowledge and spiritual advancement, always. Even at this stage, he's in the forest, and after having inquired from Sanat Kumara, he engages in austere spiritual practice. And so all of us, we also should always have this eager desire to go deeper in spiritual life. And also this point of obviously taking shelter of Sanat Kumara. So here it is mentioned that he followed the path that was given to him by Sanat Kumara. So even him, being such a powerful personality, took to the advice of spiritual master, basically. And also we can see that with all the personalities, right? Even Krishna, who is appearing soon again on Friday. So we can always meditate on this point also, how even Krishna, even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they always take shelter of the spiritual master. And only this way they can actually progress. And we know also that how is it that all this, so Maharaj Prithu went through all these different processes, but how is it that in this Kali Yuga it is not helping us? We also see that in the story of Vyasadeva, right, when he writes all the Vedic scriptures, but then he delineates all these different processes, and still he's not happy. And then Narada Muni comes and basically tells him, you missed the whole point. What did you do all this time? You know, like why did you actually not glorify the Supreme Lord? And that's when he actually wrote the Bhagavatam to point out to us that the only way is Bhakti Yoga. The only way is taking shelter of the Mahajans who give us guidance in pure devotional service. And now, of course, again, it can be argued, and that's also what happens sometimes from these other yoga people, that yeah, we cannot do bhakti, you know, it's too lofty, it's far away from us. Like in reality, we have to do activities, and we have to take care of things, and that's why, you know, taking to bhakti full time is not really possible for us. But actually, also they say, you know, pure bhakti especially is not really possible. Pure bhakti meaning fully loving God 100% all the time. How can we do it? How should we get there? You know. But then Manavaraji pointed out that actually pure bhakti is available to anybody and everybody, and not necessarily in the sense of we can be also that is there. We can be Krishna conscious right now, right? Like in 1 second, become fully Krishna conscious, can realize Krishna and be a liberated personality. But then also pure bhakti in the means of practice is always available. Because if you look at it, even the Mahajans, even perfected devotees, Srila Prabhupada or all the previous acharyas, they were performing bhajan like we do. They were chanting Hare Krishna, they were following the Mangalarti, all the program. So we can do the same right now. It's just that we don't have the same kind of consciousness right now. But this point of performing sadhana, bhakti sadhana, is there for everybody, and everybody can engage in it. And it's interesting that that's actually available for everybody. Sometimes we speak of, you know, the qualification, one is to be qualified to become a Krishna Bhakta, that is there. But at the same time, from every point in life, from every point that you are in the yoga ladder, you can take to Krishna, to pure bhakti. And Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita also in 1866 again, when he says, Sarvadharma Parityaja, give up all other dharmas, give up all other practices, and just surrender unto me. And do not fear. And then in the purport, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his purport, in his commentary, he also says that he always has this further conversation between Krishna, right? So there's Krishna and Arjuna's main discussion. Then in the purport, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur elaborates. Okay, so Krishna says this, and then Arjuna answers again in the purport, and Krishna again comments, and so he actually elaborates and broadens the Bhagavad Gita, goes deeper into it. And there he says how Krishna also says there that he will bestow the qualification for pure devotional service to somebody who surrenders unto him fully. But not only that, also he empowers his inclusive devotees to give this qualification for pure bhakti. So again, there's this point of, if we take shelter of Krishna, first we can take shelter of the spiritual master, and in this way he will give us the qualification to advance and go into pure devotional service. And so I think an important point at this, when we look at these things, is how sometimes also we as devotees, we think, okay, this pure devotional service, it sounds so far away, it sounds so lofty and not what we're about, not what we're able to do. But then instead of focusing on our problems and issues, we can more focus on what is actually the goal. And especially, I think, hearing about these personalities from Bhagavatam, I find it so inspiring that, you know, how eager they were and how focused on just attaining this goal of loving Krishna with a full heart. And of course, also we can see that in the Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, how he's always focused on this goal and nothing can stop him. Right? And also, if you read the purports, when Prabhupada speaks about performing bhakti yoga, pure devotional service, he makes it sound very easy. Right? Just chant Hare Krishna and be happy. That's it, you know, nothing else. Serve Krishna, think of Krishna, and in this way you will attain Krishna. So, Anand Chaitanya Prabhu sometimes said, you know, sometimes we become the society of anartha consciousness. Like we're very conscious about our anarthas and our shortcomings. But actually, if we can focus more on pra'artha, that which is to be attained, then we can also have this positive outlook. And Srila Prabhupada is really the one who's hammering this point also. At the same time, we can understand that although bhakti yoga is very simple, is very clearly denounced, also in Bhagavad Gita, very much stressed, so many people, they don't understand this point, that bhakti is so important. And here, Maharaj Prithu is addressed also as Purusharshava, so the Purusha Rishabha, the best among human beings. And since Prabhupada mentioned this point and says this is very significant, I looked the term up, and there's some Purusharva mentioned also in Shastras. Also, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is called by Krishna the best among beings, also already in 2:15. And there Krishna is telling him that he should stay above the dualities. So basically, a Purusharva, a best of the human beings, he's very much aware that there is material and the spiritual, and he's striving for the spiritual. And he has this eagerness, right, that Prithu Maharaj here also shows, to really go deeper. And then Prabhupada goes on to explain how there is two Purushas, and of course we know that. There is the Purusha, the living entity, and then there's the Param Purusha, or God himself, Krishna himself. And I found it interesting that, sometimes we speak of Purusha, that we are the Purusha, but at the same time, actually, we're only Prakriti, right? We can never be the controller. So in some sense, we're a controller, but a very, very small controller. Like it's said we're the controller of these bodies, but not even that, right? So many things happen without us knowing about it. But then, the main point Prabhupada makes is that some they think that these Purushas, they're the same. Krishna, the Supreme Purusha, and the living entity. And of course this is the philosophy of the Mayavadis, of the Advaitins, who think that we have to become Brahman, and that's all there is to it. And Prabhupada explains in the verse 4026, it's always very interesting how Prabhupada thinks, right? You can really, so Prabhupada gives references to different verses, and if you look these verses up, you can see how he weaves it in his purports, and how he broadens it. And I find it very fascinating how Prabhupada knows so many, he knows all the Shastras. Whenever he quotes something, it's like, how can you come to this, It's always different purports, also different verses that he quotes and weaves in. So it's very fascinating to me how definitely Super Soul inspired him to take from certain places and integrate it. So in 1426, in the purport, Prabhupada writes how one can attain the Supreme Brahman by becoming Brahman. This means that one must qualitatively become one with Brahman. By attainment of Brahman, one does not lose his eternal Brahman identity as an individual soul. So yes, we have to become Brahman, because that's who we are, essentially. We're Brahman, meaning we're part of the spiritual energy emanating from Krishna. We're Tatastha Shakti. Tatastha Shakti meaning that we're in between Tata Asta. It's like, the example is given of the beach, the sand pebble on the beach. Sometimes the water is flowing over, and sometimes it's going back. Sometimes it's dry, sometimes it's wet. But I always find funny how Vaishesh Prabhu connects it to book distribution. So Tatastha Shakti, the Jiva, the living entity, they walk around out there looking for happiness, and they're always overcome by so many things all the time. Sometimes, basically they just want to be happy, so they look for happiness, and then whatever they see, they want to, get some happiness out of it. So even if they see a book distributor, they're very interested. Oh, something is here. What is it? And they want to get something, and the book distributor has to take chance of that, or see that actually living entities, they're very open for suggestions, because they're Prakriti in nature, they're very much controlled ultimately by Krishna. It's also seen here in this world how whatever comes their way, they try to get something out of it, but then also they will be controlled by it. So as soon as somebody can actually give a little enticement, make it a little interesting, they will find something for them. And in this way you can smuggle in some Krishna consciousness into a conditioned living entity. So with Tatastha Shakti, although eternally spiritual, still we overcome sometimes by material modes. But we have to realize again that we're this spiritual entity, and there's these Mahavakyas that the Mayavadis have, that Vaitins from the Vedanta Sutra. There's different ones. One is the one where it's from the Chandogya Upanishad actually. Tattvamasi. You've heard this one? Tattvamasi. Only when you say it, it sounds very it sounds very serious, no? Tattvamasi. It basically just means they are translated, thou art that. You are this Brahman. But it's interesting also that we studied once in university this Chandogya Upanishad a little bit, and it's a text. In this specific reference is from a text of Shvetaketu and his father. So Shvetaketu, he goes to school and he learns there from his teacher, and then he comes back and he tells his father what he learned. And so there basically his father wants to teach him that everything, you are everything and everything is you. That's kind of what transpires. But then there's different interpretations of that. There's different translations also. And modern Indologists, Sanskritists, they actually come closer to the translation and interpretation Ramanujacharya gave, which is very nice. Because they say, so Ramanujacharya, he was the one who actually went against the Advaitins very philosophically. He wrote a lot of commentaries on Vedanta Sutra, on Bhagavad Gita, and different Vedic scriptures to point out that no, actually the soul and God, they're different. They're connected, of course, but they're two individual beings. And so Tattvamasi, he translates to mean this is how you are, not this is you are this, but this is how you are. So small thing, but it makes a big difference. So it means that yes, this is how you are. You are Brahman also. This is your quality. And that's what he called it Vishishtadvaita, right? Qualified monism. So he attributes the Supreme with qualities. And these qualities, they manifest in the individuals. It's like, we're like attributes to the Absolute. Because each one of us has some quality that only we have, right? Like every individual soul has some quality that only we have, and that's why Krishna is hankering for that quality, that we offer it back to him, that we connect with him through this. So it's like we beautify Krishna in that sense. Of course, Krishna makes us having this quality, so he beautifies himself, but by actually rendering service and connecting back to him, we offer this quality to him and make him more beautiful. In that sense, it's like, you can say there's a flower, but then you can say it's a fragrant flower, a very colorful flower. And this kind of attributes, they represent the jivas in that sense. So in this way, even these Mahavakyas, these great, or this the kind of the guiding shlokas, the guiding sutras of the Mayavadis, they are also very much supporting Bhakti Yoga and the difference, the Chintya Veda Tattva, basically. So yeah, we have to recognize that we're Brahman, and how do we do that? Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki Jai. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. How do we do that? How can we realize that we're spirit souls, spiritual entities, basically always situated in Brahman? So Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse 1426, where he says how one who is engaged in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Not only he says that, but he says every neophyte devotee, he's on that stage. What did he say here? Even for the neophyte devotee, devotional service is considered Brahma Guyaya Kalpati. Devotional service to the Lord is never considered a material activity. Since he is acting on the Brahma Bhuta platform, a devotee is already liberated. So yeah, congratulations, you're all liberated already. Does it feel like that? But it's actually, it's true. So we have, how can we understand it? That's the question. Well, there's different points. And one is, of course, there's the Vyabhicharena, and Prabhupada. Oh no, this is from Purichan Prabhu's Surrender to Me. The word Avyabhicharena implies having the tendency to render service to no one except Krishna. Because the devotee is serving Krishna exclusively, he has no opportunity to serve the modes. Yeah? So, means one-pointed service, only to Krishna. In this way, we can always be situated in transcendence. Because if we give full time to Krishna, then where is the time for the modes? That's the idea. At the same time, of course, if it's not, he says here, unfailing in all circumstances, then we're not actually realizing this Brahman realization fully. So it has to be unfailing to really be, that we really can have the realization. Although we are liberated, but still it has to be in this always in this consciousness. And it's interesting that So we are all already liberated, but what is the point? We're already liberated, but we tend to forget. So yeah, there's also in the Nectar of Devotion, for example, right? There are all these statements. If one smells a flower that is offered to Krishna, he's liberated. If one, all his sinful reactions are, forgiven forever. So even there, also the point is, yeah, this is happening. If you do that, all your sins are liberated. But afterwards, if you go on sinning, that will not be, that will not be liberated already. That will not be like in advance already forgiven in that sense. So although it takes away all the sins, it doesn't take away the desire to sin. It doesn't take out the root cause of sinning. So in the same way, also in devotional service, if we practice it once, twice, yes, it will give us the liberation. But then if we fall back into old habits, if we continue doing things that are not pure devotional service, then of course it will also drag us back down. Then Prabhupada also quotes from this verse 4.3.20 how always engaging in the activities of devotional service, devotees feel ever increasingly fresh and new in all their activities. The all-knower, the super-soul within the heart of the devotee, makes everything increasingly fresh. This is known as the Brahman position by the advocates of the Absolute Truth. In such a liberated stage, Brahmabhuta, one is never bewildered, nor does one lament, or become unnecessarily jubilant. This is due to the Brahmabhuta situation. And Prabhupada writes in the purport how there's nothing uninspiring for a highly advanced devotee. So I found this very interesting. There's nothing uninspiring for a highly advanced devotee, and I can see in my life it's not always like that I'm always fully inspired. But you can see when I'm just reading Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, and so many things are happening. Even Prabhupada made it to the US, and I'm right there now where it's like the first people come to see him, and he gives some lectures, and they start coming a little bit more regular. So many things went wrong. Basically, everything went wrong. He tried so many things. He tried to ask his god brothers for help. They didn't reply. Either they didn't reply, or if they replied, they were just saying no. They don't think it's a good idea. He should come back and stay in the mud and get things like this. Then he asked the government, and actually I don't know if it was the Prime Minister or somebody in charge of the finances who would have supported him, who he had a good connection to, he would sold the Bhagavatam said to back in India. He was supposed to come to the US, and Prabhupada made some plans to meet him and then discuss. But then he got somebody else got he got replaced. Basically, he got replaced and didn't make it to the US. So even that, it was like such a good arrangement. You would think, okay, that's perfect. He's coming so that Prabhupada can meet him, and Krishna will surely support that so that he can spread this mission. But no. But Prabhupada, whatever happened, he just went on like full steam, fully inspired. There's nothing uninspiring for a pure devotee. And I find it very fascinating. So, and I feel also that's also always coming through Bhagavatam. If you read Bhagavatam, if you read Gita, if you read any books written by Srila Prabhupada, there is this abounding enthusiasm, right? There is this abounding positivity also. This abounding guarantee that Prabhupada gives us that, if you just keep on doing what you're doing, you're going back to Godhead. And it's like guaranteed, sure, 100%, nothing, no fear of not going there. And then from this purport, we didn't quite finish it, like with Kesha Madhava in verse number 7. Srila Prabhupada also wrote that Narottam Das Thakur recommends, for a transcendental blissful life, chant the Hare Krishna mantra, come worship the holy place of Vrindavan, and always engage in the service of the Lord, of the spiritual master, and of the Vaishnavas. This Krishna consciousness movement is therefore very safe and easy. We have only to execute the order of the Lord and fully surrender unto Him. We have only to execute the order of the spiritual master, preach Krishna consciousness, and follow in the path of the Vaishnavas. The spiritual master represents both the Lord and the Vaishnavas. Therefore, by following the instructions of the spiritual master and by chanting Hare Krishna, everything will be alright. So it's like so simple, so positive, and yeah, I just want to end with this point of how I think it's very practical. That if we just follow Srila Prabhupada's system, his program, it's so blissful. And I could see just this Sunday again, you know. Always Sundays, they're special because then so many things are happening and so many guests are coming. And this Sunday also we had some guests that were here for the first time, a lot of guests actually for the first time. And we were so inspired, you know, to come here. And like they were really seeking also in the class, you know, there's a yogi was there who was doing yoga, and then Bhakta Lukas, who maybe is watching. So he was so enthusiastic to go deeper, and he was like, you know, he was practicing Christianity since as a child, but he was so inspired that actually now he found answers to so many questions that Christianity couldn't answer him. And so just by engaging with these kind of personalities that they're there outside, they come here also, by preaching to them, by speaking about Krishna, it gives such an enthusiasm to the heart, such a satisfaction also. So if we just follow that, because that's what Prabhupada gave us, Shravanam Kirtan, so we just hear and preach what we hear from Prabhupada. And people are so enthusiastic, so we should also be enthusiastic. And we become enthusiastic by doing it. And then also afterwards, we had the Kirtan with Nanda Prashapu, and so many Indian students came from Germany. And they were like super fired up, and we had an amazing Kirtan. It was so nice. Because also, we come back to this point of Sarvadharma Parityaja. I was reflecting a little bit, what does it mean? What does it mean, Sarvadharma? Eventually, and of course we're not yet on the stage, to give up everything, all the dharmas, like all the other duties that we might have, especially if we live outside the temple as householders. We have to perform our duties. But by practicing that a little bit, and we can do it in the temple especially, we don't have anything else to do here than just to render pure devotional service, focus on that. By giving up all these dharmas, by also giving up all the social concepts that we have, you know, of how we should behave, like in terms of, you know, cultural boundaries. You know, if we come here, we're spiritual souls engaged in Krishna service, and when these Indian devotees came, and they were not all devotees, but they were standing a little on the side, and when we included them in the kirtan, it was so blissful. They were so happy, and we were so happy. So if we can just, you know, in the name of, for the sake of pleasing Krishna, work together and serve together, it is really inspiring for everybody, uplifting everybody. And so we should try to do that more, surrender to Krishna in terms of also giving up our false ego, or, you know, whatever petty little problems we have, we submerge our minds in so many things that are not good. But if you focus on the positive, and if you focus on prarthana, on attaining Krishna, then these good qualities also come out more quickly. And as Prabhupada says, the path will be one that is very easy, very safe, and very joyfully performed, as Krishna also says. Yes, and just to finish, last one. This was something I heard and I found inspiring. Just also there's some boundaries, so we have to be within the boundaries of what the acharyas teach us, with our especially what our spiritual masters give us. So in the Srila Sriram Swami Maharaj, he spoke about two Prabhupada disciples who had an interesting experience with Srila Prabhupada. You know, it was on the topic of guru-disciple. The disciple has to follow the guru, and if he doesn't follow, then the guru cannot help him. If the disciple ignores the guru's instructions, then what to do? So one devotee or one disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he left the temple, and he was doing a lot of service before, but then he kind of slid it away. And he started doing all kinds of sense gratification, went to nightclubs and did this and that. And then one time Srila Prabhupada appeared to him in a dream and told him that he has to go to the temple again and start practicing because he was not chanting. Prabhupada just appeared to him in a dream and told him, hey, if you don't do this, then what can I do, But I want you to come back to God, so please, go for it. Just chant, just do what I told you, just these 4 things, 4 regulative principles, chant Hare Krishna. Enough, but just do this, please. And so this devotee came to his senses and did it. And then another one had become a Ritvik, who was propounding that you don't have to take initiation of a follower of Srila Prabhupada, but just by following Prabhupada, that would be enough. And he was preaching like that. But then also there, Prabhupada appeared in his dream and told him to stop speaking this nonsense, otherwise he cannot guarantee him to take him back to God. So it's like very interesting, That's the mercy of the Guru. How he will always be there to save us in the situations where we need it most. And so if we just somehow try to stick to these instructions, then all success is guaranteed. And Srila Prabhupada made this point very often, and also here today, and in these previous verses. So yes, thank you very much for listening. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. If you have any questions or comments.
I just thank you very much for this topic of being always engaged. And just by chance this morning, I was hearing something. I was hearing Srila Prabhupada, and I never heard him speak about himself. When you not glorify yourself, but you speak about your own spiritual practices. And this is in very beginning, 1966 in New York. So all these devotees are super brand new, don't know anything about Krishna consciousness. And then Srila Prabhupada is trying to inspire them. And I just find it inspiring. Maybe we could listen for, I think it's 1 minute or 2 minutes. He speaks about how to stay enthusiastic, how he stayed enthusiastic.
Karma. Karma means work. We have to work. Without working, this body and soul cannot go. It is a very misconception that one who is for spiritual realization, he hasn't got to work. No, he has got to work more. Persons who are not for spiritual realization, they may be engaged in work for 8 hours only. But those who are engaged for spiritual realization, they are engaged 24 hours. 24 hours. That's the difference. And that difference is you find that on the material platform, on the bodily conception of life, if you work for 8 hours only, you will feel fatigue. But spiritual purpose, if you work more than 24 hours, unfortunately you haven't got more than 24 hours at your disposal, still you won't feel fatigue. I tell you, this is my practical experience. This is my practical experience. And here, all is working. Something reading or writing, something reading or writing. 24 hours. And simply when I feel hungry, I take some food, and simply when I feel asleep, I go to bed. Otherwise, always, I don't feel fatigue. You can ask Mr. Paul whether I'm not doing this. So I take pleasure in it. I don't feel fatigue. Similarly, when one will have that spiritual sense, he you won't feel, rather you feel disgusted to go to sleep. To go to sleep. Go sleep and come, just to distract. See, he wants to lessen the time of sleeping. That now, as we pray, Bande Rupa Sanatana Raghudigo, Sri Jiva Gopal Ho. These 6 Goswamis, they were deputed by Lord Chaitanya to this.
Anyway, I thought it was relevant to Prabhupada was so enthusiastic. Fired up.
Sad, the day is only 24 hours.
Thank you.
You can stay. I would just remembered a verse. Maybe you can help me on that. Guru Maharaj quotes this verse about pure devotional service. It is so potent that, what is it? Just by knowing it exists, just by hearing about it, glorifying the service of others, then this is so powerful that it will purify. I don't remember it's a very sinful.
Yeah, even those who hate living out another living thing.
Yeah, I was just appreciating your point in the beginning about our focus on pure devotional service. And I was just thinking also about you were saying about Prabhupada, how he was about his enthusiasm, and I think he was Radhikaraman Prabhu in one class was saying how actually Prabhupada is so glorious and we kind of take it for granted. Oh, it's the pure devotee, it's how it should be. Everything is easy, but actually that's the glory of Prabhupada. That it was not easy. Like he had to choose to do what he did, to be enthusiastic, to do it anyways. And that's his glory. That he had so much difficulty and yet he did what he did. Like he continued on, and I really liked this point when I heard it.
Maharaj quoted that verse in Ratnamachi Shamananda's place. You were there.
I was wondering, you mentioned how everyone at any stage can be engaged in pure devotional service. Then we find ourselves feeling so fortunate that we have this opportunity, and then we have relatives who have given to us a lot on material platform in this life, and there's some feelings, and of course we want them to give what we have, that fortune, what we gain, but we find ourselves often it's not so easy. And I was wondering if you could explore, what, I guess what comes to me is time. We have to be patient and wait. But what's your realization? What's your approach on this? How they can engage in pure devotional service?
For sure. I want to know the way. Yeah, I mean, in the end, there's also the free will, right, of every living entity. Manushyanam Sahasreshu, Kashipatati, there's very few who actually want to take it up. So we can do everything that they have favorable circumstance, but to do it they have themselves. In my case, I mean, although none of my relatives are devotees, I still feel very fortunate that they're very open, and especially also, for example, my brother and my mother, they're very much, into esoteric things and all that. So at least we can discuss, and then I can always bring some shloka and they will appreciate some relevant point, yeah. And otherwise, I think it's just, the main thing is to be an example, right? To actually be yourself a devotee when you're in their presence. Still then, carrying that mood, serve them.
Yeah, I like very much how you said in the beginning that is their free choice. So it's like we respect that. And that's something is, at least for some, difficult to do. You want to like,
I also
force it. But then there is this element which needs to be acknowledged and honored. And then you brought up this point of example. Probably the easiest way to inspire, not convert, not force, but inspire, is being inspired yourself.
But just also maybe this point of everybody can take to pure devotional service, yes, but how they can do it is by surrendering to Krishna, right? So in that sense, again, they have to want it. It's not like, okay, everybody can, it's a possibility. If you want, you can, but doesn't mean that everybody will automatically do it, right? You know what I mean? Even if the possibility is there, rare souls actually do it. But just to counter the argument of people saying, bhakti is like far away and we cannot do it. More this one. If you want, you can. You have to want. I think that was my point.
Just on the point of example, Prabhupada made the statement that preaching is very easy. You just have to be happy. Like if as a devotee you're very blissful, then that's the greatest preaching. Of course, in order to be blissful, you need to be spiritually deep.
Thank you very much. Grantarachan Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta ki jai.
Bhakta Lukas ki
Jai.
It's an outbreak, so I'm thinking out.
Luki. Wie ist weiter noch? Luki.
I think the other thing, nice. Weird.